Hey, what's up, everyone, and welcome back to Franchise Unfiltered. Today, I'm going to do something a little bit different. I've done this a few times before, but not super often. It's just me today, going solo. But I want to spotlight a brand new franchise that just launched. Actually, technically, they haven't even officially launched yet. So this is truly insider access, early access, whatever you want to call it. But I honestly think it's by far one of the most exciting brands to come on the scene over the last 5 or 6 years, and I'll explain why that is. But wanted to take a couple minutes to give my audience, my listeners, again, this early access to what I think is going to be just a tremendous franchise that absolutely changes the landscape of the industry that it's in. So first of all, I want to set the stage a little bit. So this is a brand in the health and wellness space, and if you've listened to me for any period of time, you'll know that I'm not a huge proponent of saying like, hey, there's one particular industry or one particular of category a franchise that is superior to others. It truly does really depend on your experience, your goals, what you're looking to accomplish through owning your own business. It depends on the amount of capital that you have access to, and ultimately just kind of where you're at in your personal and professional life. That's going to play a large role in determining whether or not a particular franchise is a good fit for you or not. But I will say, health and wellness, and I've said this numerous times on the podcast before. Health and wellness is by far one of the most exciting categories in franchising. It's certainly one of the categories that's experiencing the most growth, both from a consumer demand standpoint as well as just seeing some really solid, exciting brands come onto the scene. But this one in particular, there's a number of things here that really set this apart, and I've never seen anything like it in my 12 plus years of franchise experience. So we're talking about the health and wellness space. As you probably all realize, wellness is not just a trend anymore. It's a $4.5 trillion global industry. But here's what's interesting about it. It's getting more personalized, right? The prescriptive healthcare services are more and more fine-tuned to the individual. It's more data-driven, and it's becoming more holistic every single year. So you're seeing, a lot more people having their blood work done on a regular basis, and then, based on their specific, markers, that's going to determine what type of supplements they're taking, or, are they taking peptides? Are they, in a position where something like hormone replacement therapy, TRT, would make sense. So, that's a trend that's really been building. And we're seeing that drive because people want to live longer. They want to feel better. They want to perform at their best physically, mentally, emotionally. And many people are willing to spend good money to do that. It's an investment in themselves. So we're seeing massive investment into businesses in this space, things like hormone optimization, peptides, recovery, cold therapy, IVs, diagnostic testing. I mean, the list goes on. And these things are not necessarily new in the context of franchise opportunities. I've had, numerous founders on the podcast that are involved in brands that play in this space to some extent. But I just wanted to kind of set the stage. So this is the industry that we're talking about. So why is this particular brand that's getting ready to launch so exciting? Really, they're bringing the best of all of these services, right? So on one side of the business, they call it the playground, right? So think equipment, right? So things that are going to help with longevity, help with recovery. So cold therapy, heat therapy, light therapy, hyperbaric chambers, things of that nature, the playground. All right. And then you have the apothecary side of the business, as they describe it, which is going to be, more of the prescriptive based on blood work that's being done. So this is where, it gets very, very personalized. So think, personalized supplement regimens based on blood work, hormone optimization, peptide therapies. Haven't seen many franchise concepts bring all of this under one roof. All right. So I think that's interesting because obviously it all goes hand in hand together, right? I mean, if I'm having blood work done and a physician is able to review that blood work with me and recommend supplements that I should be taking based on, what my body needs, if they're able to recommend specific peptides that I could personally really benefit from, and then in addition to that, if they're able to say, hey, you have more inflammation than we would like to see, so we recommend cold therapy 2 to 3 times a week, whatever the case may be. The playground side of the business goes hand in hand with the apothecary side of the business. So I've not really seen any one franchise package all of this together nicely under one roof. So that's okay. That's part of what makes this exciting, right? But what really makes this different is who's behind this brand. All right. So the first is the franchise expertise that's behind the brand, and that's Sequel Brands. So Anthony Geisler is the founder and CEO of Sequel Brands. We'll link the podcast episode I did with Anthony a few months ago in the show notes for this. If you didn't catch that episode, I'd encourage you to go listen to the podcast I did with Anthony, because I think it'll really drive home why Sequel Brands and the platform that they're building makes any of the franchises that they own and operate particularly compelling. So I won't recap all of that here, since I had a full-length conversation with Anthony previously on the podcast. But the kind of quick story is Anthony was the founder and CEO of Exponential Fitness for over a decade. Exponential Fitness currently still is the largest platform of boutique fitness franchises. They also started getting into some concepts that were more recovery and wellness based, but brands you would recognize like Club Pilates, Pure Barre, Stretch Lab, just to name a few. And Exponential Fitness went public 4 or 5 years ago. Anthony stayed on board for a period of time after taking the company public. And then, as many founders do, he exited. He took some time off, but now he is taking everything he learned throughout that experience, building Exponential Fitness, the good and the bad, and he's doing it again with Sequel Brands. So currently, Sequel Brands has 4 concepts under their portfolio. They have Pilates Addiction, which is growing like crazy and really poised to kind of revolutionize the Pilates industry. Club Pilates obviously being the most dominant national brand out there, but it tends to skew to a slightly older demographic, and there's a certain type of Pilates workout that people are looking for when they go to a Club Pilates. There's a big gap in the market for a totally different type of Pilates workout that's geared for a totally different demographic. And, most of the companies in that space are smaller independent companies. So that section of the Pilates industry is very, very fragmented. So you have Pilates Addiction, you have iFlex Stretching Studios, which is assisted stretching, again, geared at recovery and wellness. You have Body 20, which is EMS, electromuscular stimulation, strength training. I've had numerous people, including Chris Pena, the founder of Body 20, on the show. I've placed a number of people as franchisees with Body 20. I've had some of them on the show to talk about it. Really unique, really exciting concept. And then lastly, under the Sequel Brands umbrella is Beam Light Sauna, which is infrared light and heat therapy. Again, obviously, very much in that wellness and recovery category. So those are the four brands currently under the Sequel Brands umbrella. And now with the launch of this fifth brand, it's clear to me that while, yes, Sequel Brands is still really focused on fitness, because that's obviously a key component of overall wellness and longevity, they're really doubling down on the wellness component, right? Very different from the exponential fitness portfolio of brands. If you look at that, it's very, very heavy into fitness. They have 7 or 8 different fitness modalities throughout the brands that they own, and 1 or 2 that are more in that kind of wellness and recovery category. And so I think wellness and recovery is still incredibly fragmented compared to the fitness side of things. We'll get right back to the episode in just a minute, but if you've been considering business ownership, if you're already a business owner looking to expand and you're curious about franchising, I'd love to connect with you, answer any initial questions that you have, talk about a specific franchise, and detail the exact process that I use and have taken hundreds of people through to help them understand franchise ownership, find the right franchise for them, and conduct the necessary due diligence. Click the link in the show notes if you'd like to schedule a free, no obligation strategy call. I look forward to talking with you. And now back to the episode. All right. So Sequel Brands, ton of experience when it comes to building national franchise brands. Anthony's been able to recruit over really the entire leadership team that was with him for over 10 years while building Exponential Fitness. So as an example, iFlex Stretch Studios, their brand president is the brand president that led Stretch Lab from 100 and some open locations to well over 600 or 700 locations open. The brand president for Pilates Addiction under Sequel Brands was the brand president for Club Pilates for nearly 10 years, right? They've got well over 1,000 locations open across the US. So a lot of experience. And that trickles down to everything, including, real estate. The guy running real estate for Sequel Brands has, been involved in helping franchisees sign leases for their locations over 2,000 times. So, it's pretty rare that you get, these earlier stage emerging type of franchise opportunities paired with a highly experienced leadership team. They're very well capitalized. I mean, the numbers are out there in terms of how much Anthony made when he took Exponential Fitness public, and he's rolling the vast majority of that into building out Sequel Brands. So I could go on and on, but the gist of it is you've got a very, very experienced franchisor leadership team backing this. Okay. Exciting, not completely unheard of, right? So what's the next thing that makes this so unique? It's the 2 other partners in this business. So the first of which is a guy by the name of Gary Brecka. And you may know Gary Brecka as the ultimate human. He's a biohacker, health optimization expert, talks a lot about longevity. He's been on Joe Rogan's podcast. He's, worked with some really big names out there to, help them in their personal health and wellness journeys. And he's built a big brand and a big following in the process. So if you haven't heard of Gary, I feel like most people probably have at this point, especially if you're paying any attention whatsoever to health and wellness. But go check out Gary. He's, like I said, got a huge following. He's a wealth of information when it comes to, optimizing your health and longevity. So you got Sequel Brands, you got Gary Brecka, and then you have Tony Robbins. Yes, Tony Robbins. If you haven't heard of Tony Robbins, you're probably not listening to a podcast like this, would be my guess. Tony Robbins, one of the most recognizable names in personal development, has been for decades now. And I want to make this clear because, again, it's not unheard of for franchise brands to have affiliations with, celebrities or, very recognizable names. This is not like a paid endorsement. Gary and Tony are not like paid spokespeople for sequel brands and this new concept that they're launching. Gary Brecka and Tony Robbins are actually active partners in the business, right? And so this new longevity-based concept that Sequel Brands is launching is all built entirely around the framework and the protocols that Gary Brecka has developed over the last 20 or so years. That you've possibly heard people like Dana White, the founder and CEO of UFC, talk about working with Gary and going through his protocol and how much it changed his life and probably, in a lot of ways saved his life or extended his life. There's a huge list of, celebrities that Gary has worked with personally. Jelly Roll, the country singer, I think he's lost over 200 pounds in the last year and a half or so. Largely credits that to his work with Gary Brecka. So the actual menu of services is built around Gary's ultimate human protocol. All right. And then you've got Tony Robbins, who not only is just, an absolute powerhouse in, the personal development realm, but he also has a company that he co-founded several years ago called Life Force. All right. And there's a lot to unpack with Life Force. I won't get into all of that right now. And I don't claim to be an expert necessarily on Life Force, but there's a big virtual or telehealth component to that. All right. So all of that is going to be incorporated into these longevity centers that Sequel Brands is launching as well. And that's important for a number of reasons, which I'll highlight here in just a minute. But this is the first and only franchise that I'm aware of that is focused solely on performance and longevity. You couple that with, the backing and expertise of Sequel Brands, right? So they're the franchise experts in this. Then you've got Gary Brecka and Tony Robbins, who are the faces of the brand, the, product or industry experts, not to mention, they will be incredible spokespeople and advocate for the brand. So very, very unique combination here that I think is going to be pretty powerful. And I think it's going to give them a lot of strategic advantages, right? Which is where I think this gets even more compelling. So you've got built-in brand awareness, right? Tony Robbins and Gary Brecka, their combined social media reach is north of 500 million views a month, right? You're talking 500 million views or more just across Tony Robbins and Gary Brecka's platform, right? That kind of organic visibility is unheard of in franchising. I mean, the toughest part for most emerging brands is just getting the name out there, educating the consumers on who they are, what they do, and how they can help, and doing so in a cost-effective manner, right? A lot of times, a lot of that cost falls to franchisees, which is common, right? And not wrong by any stretch. If you're launching a business, you need to be prepared to invest dollars into marketing and advertising. But the point here is the type of reach, the size audience that Tony Robbins and Gary Brecka have it's unheard of. I've just never seen anything like it in franchising. And, their goal will be to drive customers to the brick and mortar longevity centers that they're going to be launching through Sequel Brands platform, right? Driving new customers, new members to franchise owned locations. All right. So, these guys will be actively promoting the brand to their audience. They're checking the clinical compliance box. This is what I was alluding to earlier when I said there's a number of advantages to the Life Force component of this. So, one of the biggest challenges for anyone getting into a lot of these franchises that are, really focused on health and wellness, anything where blood work is being done, anything where something medical in nature is being recommended, like peptides or hormone replacement therapies. The biggest challenge that has to be solved for, and most franchisors don't have like a blanket way of checking this box for all of their franchisees, but it's the medical compliance, the corporate practice of medicine requirements, right? So, most of these franchises are looking for savvy business people to come in as their franchisees. They're not necessarily looking for, someone that's been a medical professional for their career. Not saying that doesn't exist, and I'm certainly not saying that if you're a medical professional, you can't also be a savvy business person. I've seen that combination many times, but for the business people out there looking for a good business opportunity, it can be difficult to navigate getting into these types of businesses, not being a medical professional yourself. All right. And there are ways of doing it. I just haven't seen um, many of the franchisors in this space, have a very clear understanding of what the requirements are and what a franchisee needs to do in order to comply. And it's different from state to state. In some cases, it's different from county to county, right? So the life force component of this, because it's already a national, if not multinational company that Tony Robbins co-founded, and it's largely built around telehealth, they've already got all of this. So there's going to be life force incorporated into every one of these brick and mortar longevity centers, meaning that piece of it, the corporate practice of medicine requirements, is already handled for franchisees. It's not something that they're going to have to worry about. So that's a major competitive advantage. We'll get right back to the episode in just a minute, but if you've been considering business ownership, if you're already a business owner looking to expand and you're curious about franchising, I'd love to connect with you, answer any initial questions that you have, talk about a specific franchise, and detail the exact process that I use and have taken hundreds of people through to help them understand franchise ownership, find the right franchise for them, and conduct the necessary due diligence. Click the link in the show notes if you'd like to schedule a free, no obligation strategy call. I look forward to talking with you. And now back to the episode. All right. And what all this means is that, again, they're not looking for medical professionals necessarily. They're looking for people that want to build and scale a business. And so that means you can run this business without being a doctor, right? Without, having to build out your own infrastructure in terms of the clinical requirements, right? So this is very much an executive ownership model, right? Designed to be run with a clinical director, performance consultants. As the franchisee, your focus is on hiring the right team, building a high-end client experience, and then growth, right? Most of the people that are going to be attracted to a brand like this are thinking multiple locations or multiple units over time, right? So your role as the franchisee in this business is to be the CEO, right? As I said, build and lead the team, and then it's monitoring KPIs. It's looking at the levers that the franchise owner can pull on to continue to drive better results, and then it's that big picture growth strategy. How do we take the success we're having in location number one, parlay that into location number two, and so forth and so forth. So with that, a little bit more on who this is for, right? As I stated at the top of this, I'm a huge believer that there is not a one size fits all approach to what's the right franchise for someone. So let me be very, very clear here. This is not going to be the right franchise for a lot of people. All right. It's not a low barrier to entry. All right. As I've mentioned several times, this is a brick and mortar center, right, that has some very high-end equipment and technology in it. And while, a big part of the motivation for Tony Robbins and Gary Brecka and Sequel Brands here is to, bring some of these services and some of these protocols that in the past have been almost exclusively available to people that are very wealthy, right, or have some sort of inside access, to bring it to the masses, right? But at the end of the day, at least for now, this is still going to be catering to a higher end clientele, people that have the disposable income to invest in themselves and their bodies, in their longevity, right? So, um, as a result of that, the locations are going to have a higher end look and feel, right? The equipment that needs to go in there is not inexpensive, right? We're talking cryotherapy, cold plunges, a variety of different types of saunas, hyperbaric chambers, and then on the apothecary side, all that's needed, the lab equipment and things of that nature. All right, so the total investment on this is going to vary largely depending on where you're at in the country, cost of real estate, cost of construction and build out. But, as kind of a general rule of thumb, this is going to be for people that have a net worth of probably at least, 1.5 million, and, liquid capital or access to liquid capital, probably at a minimum somewhere in the $300,000 to $400,000 range. All right. And then the big thing is, they're looking for people that have the business mind, that have the management and leadership experience, and want the opportunity to build a big business, right? That's also in a position to really, really change the landscape of the health and wellness industry going forward, right? So, there's going to be a huge focus, especially because Tony Robbins and Gary Brecker are both so involved in this, and their reputation and their brands are going to be connected to this. There's going to be a huge focus on commitment to excellence from their franchisees. They want people that are going to represent the brand well, and prioritize giving their clients a great experience, but also a very high level of service to go with that. So, if any of that sounds interesting, would love to connect and share more with you. The good news is, I mean, this is still, at the time I'm recording this is still technically like a pre-launch, right? I think they are starting to have conversations with interested parties, but officially, we're still several weeks, if not a month, out from this launching. If you follow Gary Brecker or Tony Robbins on social media, you will probably see them starting to talk about this new brand to their audiences. So it's a really good time if this type of business is appealing to you. All right. Because it's pre-launch, territory is still wide open across the country, but this is one of those where, especially if you're in an area like Nashville, Austin, Charlotte, North Carolina, Atlanta, Dallas, Houston, prime territories across the country are going to start getting taken down pretty quickly, because there are people out there that are not sitting on the sidelines. They're looking for the next big opportunity, and they're going to be ready to dive in and take a closer look at this one. So, look, I've been in this business for a very long time. I've seen a lot of franchises launch, and most of them don't have this level of strategy, alignment, and the market momentum right out of the gate. All right. That's why this is so special. All right. You've got a franchise team that knows how to scale wellness brands, and they have a phenomenal track record of doing that. You got the two, I don't know about the two of the most visible names in health and mental performance out there, pushing the message, partnered in the brand, promoting this to their audiences. Right? You've got the playbook, the platform, and the tailwind, right? And if you've been waiting for the right franchise to get behind, not just another frozen yogurt shop or like home service brand, if you're really looking for that thing where you can combine passion, purpose, profits, this could be the one to look at. All right. Now, I don't want anyone listening to this to be discouraged, right? If the financial requirements that I mentioned are a little bit out of reach for where you're at, or if this is just not the type of business that gets you excited. I work with hundreds of the top franchise brands out there, and there is something out there for anyone that is truly serious about owning their own business, taking their livelihood into their own hands. There's a franchise out there that could be a fit, and that's exactly what I'm here to do, is help people get clear on, number one, why do they want to own a business and what would that ideally look like? Help you narrow in on the right types of franchises you should be looking at, and then coach you through all the due diligence, all the research that's necessary, including making sure that you have a good sense of what your funding options would be, how you would fund a franchise should you decide that you want to move forward with one. So, tons of great opportunities out there. This is just one that, for all the reasons I've outlined here, I think is particularly interesting and exciting. But either way, I would love to have a conversation with you if business ownership is something that has been on your mind, something that you're curious about and would like to learn more. For those that don't know, my services are 100% free. My business is very similar to how a real estate agent or an executive recruiter operates. So there's no costs, there's no obligation. My goal is just to give you good insight, good advice, a methodical process to follow. So would love to connect with you if you're curious, learning more about this exciting opportunity in the longevity space, or if you just want to talk franchises and business ownership in general. So thank you for tuning in. We'll be releasing more podcast episodes coming soon. We took a little break or here at the first of the year. We're going to be changing up the format of the podcast a little bit, which I think people will like. And those changes are based on, some feedback that we've gotten from the audience. So excited to bring you more podcasts with great guests, slightly different format, but be on the lookout for new episodes coming soon. And thank you guys so much for tuning in.